Hello and welcome to this C# tutorial on how to make a screen recorder. And just start off, I will say I am not actually recording this video on a screen recorder that I made. I am just using OBS, and that's because the screen recorder that we're going to end up with it's going to be a functioning screen recorder. It's going to have audio and all of that, but it's not going to be, the most perfect screen recorder out there. So if you're looking to make like something like OBS, this isn't really the tutorial, but rather this is just a basic tutorial on how to get a functioning screen recorder to work, and basically all of what goes into making a screen recorder. And so I just want to say that right off the bat. So anyways, with that out of the way, we're actually going to need to install a NuGet package in order to get this to work. So the NuGet package that we're going to need to install is something called FFMPEG. And it's a very helpful tool that basically helps us, manipulate audio and stuff. So I'm pretty sure, where is it here? I think it's under here. Oh, here it is. Manage NuGet packages. And then we want to browse for, I believe it is called, well, we want to get accord.video.ffmpeg. And so we want to get this one right here, and then we just want to hit install. Then we want to hit that I accept, and it will automatically install it for you, something that C# is very good at doing. And so once that's installed, you actually also need one other thing. You actually also need to actually download FFmpeg and hook it up to your you need to hook it up to your path, kind of like if you've ever installed Eclipse. You kind of have to do the same thing where you go into environmental variables and hook it up to your path. I'll link a video down in the description where you can watch how to do that, but I'm just not going to go over that just because I want to get right into making the actual screen recorder. So once you download that and get that all hooked up, then you can come back and we'll be ready. So basically, we don't really need to do anything with the form yet. I kind of want to start off just by building the actual screen recorder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a class that's basically just going to be called our screen recorder class here. So I'll just call this a screen recorder class. And yeah, so this is just going to encompass everything, which probably is not the best coding practice to get into, but just because I want to keep it all in one class because we're only making one screen recorder here, I'm just going to be doing it this way. So, okay, so once you have this all created, we need to do a few imports. So first, what I like to do is, I like to just import everything that we need from the forms, so that way we can manipulate forms as we need them. So we're just going to be saying something like, we need to be using system.diagnostics, we need to be using system.drawing, we need to be using system.drawing.imaging. We need to be using what else? Oh, we're going to add a time feature to this. So we need system.runtime.interrupt services, and then finally we go down here and import our FFmpeg. So we say using accord.video.ffmpeg here. And so once we got all that in, these are all the things that we're going to be using throughout this class here. So the first thing that we can go ahead and do is, before defining our constructor, we just need a few variables here that are going to carry out throughout the class. So the first thing we're going to say is we're going to create a private rectangle called bounds here. And the bounds variable here is just going to get the bounds of the screen that happens to be running this. And so yeah. So then also what we can go ahead and do is we can get a private string going called output path, because we want the user to be able to decide where the final video is going to be located. So this is actually going to be an extremely important variable that we'll see as we move through this. And then we also are going to do a private string called our temporary path here, and this is going to be the path that we create, because basically how this screen recorder is going to be working is we're going to be creating a temporary folder on the on a data drive somewhere on the hard drive, and we're going to be taking just a lot of different screenshots of the screen, and we're going to be storing them in a temporary folder. And then after we're done recording, we're just going to take every screenshot, turn it into a video, merge it with the audio, and then we're going to get rid of the screenshots. And so we need this temporary path here to keep track of the location of where all those screenshots are. It'll make a lot more sense once we actually start using it. And then we're just going to create an integer here called file count. This is going to be for our screenshots, just so we have something to give each screenshot a unique identifier. And then finally, we're going to create a private list of string. I cannot spell today. Oh my god. Sorry about that. So we're going to create a private list of string called input image sequence, which will be image to a new list of string. And basically, this is going to store it'll store the names of all of the files, all the screenshots that we create, and so that way we have access to them when we're putting them in the video. Once again, it'll all make more sense once we actually get using it. So I'll just go ahead and define these called video variables here. Okay. The next thing that we're going to need is we're going to need our file variables. So I'll define that. File variables. And for the file variables, we're going to just say private string audio name. This is going to be what we're going to call the audio file that we create, because we're actually going to be originally creating a separate video and separate audio file, and then we're going to be merging them together at the end. And that's what FFmpeg is for, the actual downloaded version that you hook up to your environmental variables or add to your path, whatnot. So we're just going to call this mic.wav. You can call it anything you want. Just for this video's purpose, make sure it's a .wav file, because .wave file, because that's what I will. That's what I'll be doing. And then we'll also do a string called video name here, and I'll just call this video. And we're going to be using the file type of MP4, just because that is the most efficient way to do it with taking up the least amount of space. And then finally, we're also going to create the final name. And this is actually something I like to allow the user to edit, so that's why this is a variable here. And so this will be final video.mp4. So if the user does not want to edit this name, it'll just be called final video.mp4, but later on we're going to allow the user to edit it. And then finally, we're just going to also create our time variable here. We just want to get the elapsed time, so we're just going to create a stopwatch called watch, which will be equal to just a new stopwatch, just like that. And then for our audio, there's actually a specific way that we get audio in C#, so I'm just going to go ahead and just call our audio variables here. And basically what we do is we want to create a public static class called native methods here. And what native methods is going to do is it's actually just going to be importing from a certain DLL file and creating a method that will run it. I'm just going to copy and paste it in real quick, so you can actually just look it up. So basically, like, what I would do in this situation is I would just look up, so C# record audio, and then you can go in here. And then these are the two variables that we need right here, and then we can just go ahead and paste those in there, just like that. See, with programming, there's this magic tool called Google that we all use if we don't know something. So yeah, there you go. So I'll link that down in the description, so you can just paste that in there, just because I don't want to type that all out. And then once we have that, I believe that will do it for all of the variables that we need, and we can start writing some classes. So I'm going to start off with the constructor, as people normally do. So we're going to call this the public screen recorder, and this is going to take in two parameters. The first parameter is going to be a rectangle, which I'll just call B, which will be bounds, and then it's also just going to be taking a string which I'll call outpath. And obviously the first thing that we want to do is we just want to say that our bounds variable that we created is equal to B, and then our output path variable is equal to outpath, not output path. Make sure you get this right. Don't set outpath equal to output path. So maybe you don't want to name them close, but that's just the way I do it. And that's all it's going to do for now, because what we actually are going to do is we're going to create a separate method that is, because something I want to do in the constructor is I want to have it, when the variable screen recorder is called, I want it to automatically create that temporary file on the hard drive, basically. And I'm going to do that with a different method. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to create a private void called create temp folder down here. And this is going to just take in a string called name, so that way you can change the name of the temporary folder. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to say if directory. I think actually we're missing an import here because I think we need to. Yep, we need to import using system.io. And then now we should be able to call this. So if directory dot exists. So if the directory that we're, creating, or no, sorry. What this is doing actually is we're going to be checking to see if the user has a certain directory. So for my case, on my computer, I have a D drive and I have a C drive. And so this is just going to be checking whether or not the user has a D drive or C drive, because usually if people have D drives, that's where they like to keep all their massive data. At least that's the case for me. And so this is where I'm going to be storing it. So if directory.exists, if the D drive directory exists, then what we're going to do is we're going to say then string path name is going to be equal to, and something that you can do with C# is if you want to insert a variable in a string, just call the $, and then inside the string we could say the D drive and then put in brackets here the name of the variable. So that's going to be the path name, and then we're just going to say directory.create directory path name, and then we want to set the temp path equal to the path name that we just created there. And then, if they have something other than a D drive, like they just have a C drive, then you can just go ahead and do the same thing except for the C drive there. Just like, because everyone at least has a C drive, but some people have D drives, and I personally like to keep all my mass data on my D drive because my C drive is almost full. So once we have this method created, we can actually come back up here to our constructor variable, and we can just say create temp folder, and I'm just going to call this temp screenshots here. And so yeah, so now upon creating the screen recorder variable, which we're going to do in our for method, this is where we're going to be implementing this class, it's going to create a temporary folder that's going to store all the screenshots, just like that. Okay. And so after this, the next thing that we're going to be creating is we need the methods that will delete the screenshots, basically. Because obviously we don't want to keep this temporary, let's call it temporary folder for a reason. So we don't want to keep it here. So we're going to create a method called private void, and this is going to be delete path. And this is just going to take in a string called target directory, just like that. And so how we're going to do this is we're going to create an array of strings here called file, which will be equal to directory.get the files of the target directory. So we want to get all the files that are in the target directory, and then we also want to get the actual directory. There's only one in this case, but it's good just to make this a string, just in case we want to expand this later on. We want to say get directories of the target directory, just like that. So we get because not only do we want to delete the directory, but we also want to delete all the files that are within the directory, so every individual screenshot. And so what we go down here is we could just say for each string file in files, so for every file that exists in the directory, all we want to do is first we have to change its attribute to file attribute normal. And I'm not entirely sure why this is. I am almost positive it has to do with the fact that the file is read-only, and if the file is read-only, then you're not allowed to edit it. But basically what this will do, this just allows you to delete the file, so it'll set it from probably read-only to normal. And then once this is done, you can just say file dot, not that, you want to call the capital F file, dot delete, and then we want to delete the lowercase file. Just like that. And so this will delete every single file that's in the directory at the end. And then we also want to finally delete the path. So we're actually going to be doing this through two methods. So we're just going to say for each string directory in directories, we're just going to kind of call like a recursive function here, and we're just going to delete the directory, and then we're also just going to finally at the end say here directory dot delete the target directory, and then we just want to set this to false recursion. Okay, so once we got that, we actually also want to do a another delete function. And what this is going to do is, because as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to be creating two separate we're going to be creating two separate video and audio files before merging them into one final. And so we don't want to keep those separated video and audio files. We want to get rid of them after we've merged them together. And so what I just ended up calling this method is, I'm just going to call this a private void called delete files except. Delete all the files except this one. And this is going to take in a string called our target directory here, and I guess I call it a target file, and then string the exception file here. And so all this is going to do is, we're just going to create, once again, another string called files, and that's going to be equal to the directory.getFiles. You probably know the drill at this point. So target file, or no, actually, I believe this is, we do want to call this, alright, I guess it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'll just keep it like this. So, what I'm just going to say is, we're going to call another for each loop. So we're going to say for each string file in files. What we want to do here is we're going to say if the file is not equal to the exception file. So if the current iteration of the file is not equal to the exception file, then we want to say file.attribute or set attribute. Once again, this is the thing that we have to do in order to allow Windows to let us delete it. And then we're going to say file attributes dot normal here. So that's the first thing we do, and then finally we're going to say file dot delete the current file, just like that. And so this will delete every file except the file that we specify, and we're going to specify it to delete these two, delete every file except this file, except final name here, just like that. And so once we have these variables, we're also going to create one more that's just kind of for cleanup purposes. So we're just going to call a private, or no, there's actually going to be a public void, actually, excuse me, a public void called cleanup. And this is going to happen, so basically, because we're creating the temporary folder upon the screen recorder variable being called, if the the program were to crash, or the user were to just exit out of the program unexpectedly while still recording, then all the screenshots would actually stay on the drive that they saved it. The temporary file would not be deleted, because we're only going to have the temporary file delete after the video is created. And so we just want to have something that will, in an extreme case, if the program crashes, we want to just make sure that all the temporary files do indeed get deleted. And so how we're excuse me, how we're going to do that is with this public void called cleanup. So we're just going to say if directory.exists and temp path, then pretty simple. We just want to say delete path, which is the the method we just create, temp path. So yeah, pretty simple. If the path exists, then delete it. And we're going to be implementing this more once we get to actually implementing the class. So right now this method just needs to stand here as it currently does. And then so now we can actually start getting into more of the video related stuff. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a method. This is going to be another public void, or actually public string, excuse me, called getElapse. And this is just going to return the elapsed time that the screen recorder has. And if you remember, we created a stopwatch object up here. Well, it's for this purpose, called watch. So I'm just going to say return string.format, and this is a little fun to type in here. Excuse me. We want to return the format of 0d2, which is position 0 2 decimal places. So yeah. So 0, so this will return like hours, and then we want to say 1d2, this will return seconds, and then, or minutes, and then 2d2, and this will return seconds. And so we just want to say watch.elapse.hours, watch.elapse.minutes, and watch.elapse.seconds here. Okay. And so this will just allow us to keep track of the total recording time, and this will actually help us when we get around to playing around with making sure the audio and video match up. This will just allow you to look at the time of the video versus the time that's on the screen recorder's timer, and this way you can play around with, like, because we're going to be using a timer here, so you can end up playing with the with all those variables and the frame rate and stuff like that. So anyways, now we can actually get into the good stuff here. And so this is going to be the method that will end up recording the video. And I'm going to say, recording is kind of in quotes, because what is screen recording? What actually is screen recording? And basically all screen recording in this case is doing is it's just going to be taking a lot of screenshots of the screen. And so that's basically what our record video method is going to do, is it's just going to create a screenshot. And so that's why we have to run it on a timer here. So let's go ahead and just create this. So this is going to be a public void called record video here. And actually, I should probably keep up with the C#. Just there's a thing in C# where you keep the first letter capitalized and whatnot. So there's going to be a public void called record video. It's not going to take in any parameters. And so the first thing we're just going to do is we're just going to say watch.start, just so we don't forget that. We're just going to start, as soon as we hit record, we want to start keeping track of time. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to actually be using statements. So the first using statement we're going to do is we're going to use a bitmap, and we're going to say using bitmap, just called bitmap, equal to a new bitmap, which will be the size of bounds.width and bounds.height here. And then within this using statement, what we want to say is we want to say using graphics g equal to graphics dot from image, from image, and then of the bitmap. Okay, so what are we doing here? So basically we're creating a bitmap which is going to be equal to the bounds and width of the screen, and then we're going to be creating a graphics variable here that is going to basically copy something to the bitmap. So how we do that is we say g.copy from screen a new point of bounds dot left, and then bounds dot top, and then we could just say points dot empty here, and then bounds dot size here. Dot top. Okay. And size should not have these things after it. Okay, so basically all this is doing is creating a screenshot of the screen during this current iteration of the void. And so that's just basically kind of like a standard way to do it. And so once we have this screenshot, all we have to do is we then have to save it, because this is creating a bitmap, and then it's adding a copy of the screen to the bitmap that we're creating with this using statement. And so keep in mind, we're still within this using statement here. What we're going to say is we're just going to create a string called name, which is going to be equal to the temporary path plus screenshot. The temporary path being the folder that we want to temporarily save screenshots to. We're going to do screenshot dash, and then we're going to do the file count, which is, if you remember, that's the variable that we created up here. The file count, and then we're also going to add a .png. So we're going to save each file as a PNG file, and then how we actually relate this to the bitmap is we're going to say bitmap.save, and we're going to save this to the name, and we're going to use an image format .png, just like that. And then finally, another thing we want to do is we want to say input image sequence .add the name. So we want to add this directory here to the image input sequence, so that way we can keep track of every screenshot that is saved. And finally, what we want to do is we want to just increase file count, just like that. Okay. And then also don't forget to do bitmap.dispose, because when we get around to actually deleting the screenshots, Windows will not let you delete the file if you're technically using it. Unfortunately, it's not Linux, so you have to get rid of every bitmap after you're done using it. And that's basically all there is to the record video method. Is it's just creating a screenshot, and it's saving it to the folder, and it's also saving it to our array here. Okay, so after that's done, we're also going to be doing a variable called record audio. This is a little bit more straightforward. Record audio here. And record audio, this is once again just kind of a standard way to do it. So we're going to call our native method class here, and we're just going to call native methods dot, hold on a second, excuse me, private static, I have to change this. I'm going to change this to just record here. And then native methods dot, oh, that's strange. Hold on a second. I may have to make this a, yes, I have to make this public. I was wondering why that wasn't working. Okay, so now we should be able to call record. So, okay, sorry about that. So we want to call the record method that we created up here, and we just want to say, this is kind of also a default thing that you just find online. So alias rec sound, and then 2 blanks here, then 0, 0. I'll put all this in the description as well, just so you have this to type in. And then we also want to say native methods dot record, and then record rec sound, and then here 0, 0. So there's not really much to explain here. This is just kind of a default way in the C# to record while using this here. So once you have that in, that's really all there is to recording the audio, and then we can get into saving the audio and video. And so we're going to create another private void, and this is going to be a private void save video, and this is going to take in a few parameters. So this is going to take in an int called width, int called height, and an int called frame rate here. And so basically what save video is going to do is it's going to save the video to the final output location that we need it to. And in order to do this, what we have to do is we have to call another using statement, and we're going to, this is the first time we're going to be using our FFMPEG import. So we're going to say using a video file writer, and we're just going to call this VF writer. VF, and then writer here, and that's going to be equal to just a new video file writer. So using that, which we call from our Accord FFmpeg library, we're going to create, or we're going to open rather, a video on the output path that the user specified, plus 2 backslashes, plus the video name that we specified above, and as well we have to put in the width, the height, frame rate, and then also the video codec, and this is also very important. And remember up here we defined this name, the video name, as video.mp4 here. So we have to save the video codec as a MPEG-4, just like that. And so once the video is open, we can begin to add each individual screenshot that we take with the record video method. We can begin to just add that to the video file writer. So how we do that is just say for each string, which we're going to call just image location, in our image, or in our input image sequence here. So remember, we added the name of every screenshot to this array here, and so that's why we're calling this a string, because we're just getting the name of the file, which still exists at this point. We have not deleted the file. And so what we're going to do within this for loop is we're going to create a bitmap, and we're just going to call this image frame, just due to the syntax of how this is going to work. So we're going to create a bitmap called image frame, which is actually going to be equal to system.drawing.image.from file, and from the file of the image location here. And we're going to say as a bitmap, just like that. So we're going to save that as a bitmap, and then we can say, call our VF writer, and we can write a video frame here called image frame. Sorry, I cannot spell. Image frame. And so it's as simple as doing that to write an actual video frame, and then finally we want to say image frame.dispose because it's a bitmap and we have to get rid of it. And then after all this is done, all we have to do is go down here and say vfwriter.close after we're done. And this is all there really is to adding screenshots to a video. So this will create our video.mp4 file that we called up here. And so once we have this video.mp4 file, we now need the mic.wave file. And so in order to do that, we need to create a save audio method. And how we create the save audio method is, once again, it's kind of straightforward. So we're just going to call a public, or this should be a private void because we don't need to call it in our instantiation class. Private void called save audio, and once again, there's kind of a standard way to do this. So we're just going to say string audio path is equal to save rec sounds, and then plus our output path plus 2 backslashes plus our audio name that we defined up here. So this is just going to be the path that we're saving it to, and this is like kind of like a command that the native methods class is going to recognize here. And so this will just save the audio as the audio name, which we defined, remember, as mic.wave up here. So it'll save it as this file here. And then we're just going to call native methods dot record audio path, and then 0, 0 here, and then as well as native methods dot record close rec sound, and then a blank here, 0, 0, just like that. And oops, I forgot. There we go. Okay, so once again, this is just kind of standard C# that doesn't require much explanation. And then the last thing that we need before we finally write the last method, which will be the method that implements everything basically that we have been doing here, the stop method, we need one final private void, and this is going to be the void that combines the audio, the video, and audio. Now I have to say, when researching this actually took me the longest to figure out. So this is going to create a string called video and then a string called audio. It's going to take in. And so this is where you definitely need to have FFmpeg installed on your computer and hooked up to your path. And because basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a temporary command prompt app, and we're going to be executing an FFmpeg command on the command prompt. And so in order to do this, what we're going to do, is I'm just going to define up here the string variable, the arguments, because it's called arguments. So I guess I'll call this command. So the string command that we're going to be using is equal to the $, because we want to include variables in this command. And the first thing we have to do is do /c. And basically, this is just going to separate the file name, which I'll show you what that is in a second, from the actual command, and this will allow us to continuously see the command prompt, because I like to see command prompt while it's open, so that way I can see if any errors are happening. If you don't want to see this, then you could do /k, but it's kind of your choice. I'm going to do /c, and then I'm say FFmpeg, which is just the command -i, and then we actually have to include quotes in here. So how we include a quote is we're going to do \quote here, and we're going to, within the quote, we're going to put our video variable here, and then we're going to do \quote, just like that. And so this will allow us to put the video in quotes, and then we want to say -i again, and we want to do the same thing, \quote audio, and then \quote, and then we want to say -shortest and then final name here. Okay, and so this is just basically a command that I found online that will combine an audio and a video file. So we're going to be taking this here, whatever we pass in for video, this here, whatever we pass in for audio, and then we're going to be saving it as the final name. And the final name, of course, is going to be finalvideo.mp4, or whatever the user will change it to, but we'll get there in a minute. Okay, so that's going to be the command that we're executing. And so in order to run this command, what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called a process start info variable, and we're just going to call this start info, and that's just going to be equal to a new process start info, just like this. And what we're going to do actually is we're going to be setting a bunch of things for it. So I'm going to say create no window is going to be equal to false, because as I said, I wanted to create a window. This needs to be a comma, not, needs to be a comma. Create no window is equal to false, and then we want to say that the file name is going to be equal to cmd.exe, which is obviously the executable name of command prompt, and then we want to say the working directory, and this is very important, is equal to the output path. We want to make sure that cmd is running in the directory of the output path, because this command only works if these, if everything, the video, the audio, and the final name, if those are all in the same directory. So we want to make sure we're working in the same directory. And then finally, in order, the command that's run, the variable is called arguments, is going to be equal to the command that we created. Just like that. And then finally, after this is done, I don't know why I keep doing that. We don't need a comma after that. And then finally, after all of this, what we could just say is we could just execute the command. So we're just going to say using process called, execute process, which will be equal to the process.start our start info here. And then all we want to say is we want to say execute process.wait for exit. And so this will just execute the process and then automatically exit upon it being terminated. Okay. And then finally, the last method that we need for our screen recorder application is going to be the method that stops the screen recorder. So obviously we have our record video, record audio, and then we finally need this for when the person wants to stop. So the public void stop is just going to kind of implement everything we've been doing. So we obviously, first thing we want to do is want to stop the watch, because as you know, during this entire time we've been keeping track of the time that's being recorded. So we want to stop the watch first and foremost, and then we're going to need to create a few variables. And so this is just, so we're just going to call int width will be equal to the bounds dot width, and then we're going to say int height is going to be equal to the bounds dot height here. And then we're also going to create an int called frame rate, which will be, we're just going to set equal to 10 at this point. And then first thing we want to do is we want to save the audio, and then we want to save the video, and we want to save the video with save the video with the width, height, and frame rate here. And then we want to finally, there we go. Oh my god, why can I not get this right? Okay, there we go. So we want to then combine the video and audio, and then obviously we want to say just the video name, which remember was like one of the first things we defined, then the audio name. We want to combine those two, and then we want to finally delete the path of the temporary folder, and we also want to delete the files except we want to target the output path, and then we want to exclude the file, which will be named the output path plus / plus final name here. So we want to delete all of the files except the final combined audio and video file, just like that. So after all of this, our screen recorder class is complete, and all we have to go about doing is implementing it. Alright, so how we're going to implement this is we're just going to create, a basic user interface, which isn't really my favorite thing to do, but it's kind of necessary. Users have to interact with it. So we're going to create a button, which will just say record. I'll even go ahead, I'll change the font size, make it a little bit bigger. So we'll say record, and then we'll also say, where's the text? There it is. Stop. So of one that says record, one that says stop, and then we also want to allow the user to check or change the directory. So select folder here. So we'll have the user select the folder, and that's actually something that is going to be pretty important. So let's just go ahead and take care of that first. So what I actually like to do is I like to create a variable that's just going to be a Boolean variable called folder selected, which is by default is going to be set equal to false. So just with this variable, we're going to make sure that the user has to select a variable before they can start select a folder before they start screen recording. And so upon clicking on the button, and let's also define a few more public variables. So we'll just call a string output path, which will be equal to null. We'll also just say string final vid name equal by default to final video.mp4, which is what we set it equal to in here. Let's just go ahead and save this as well. So we'll do that, and then upon them clicking on the change folder or select folder directory, we want to create a folder browser dialog, which I'll just call folder browser, which will be equal to a new folder browser dialog. So we want to create that, and then we want to say folder browser dot description is going to be equal to select an output folder. And then we want to say if folder browser dot show dialog is equal to system dot windows dot forms dot dialog result dot OK, that long piece. So if they hit, they select something, then we're going to set the output path is going to be equal to the folder browser dot selected path. And then we're going to say the path selected, or the folder selected is true. And then so now that they've set a path, what we're also going to do is we're just going to create a rectangle. Whoops. A rectangle. I don't know why I cannot spell. Called bounds, which will be equal to our screen dot from control, which make sure it's this control dot bounds. And the reason we're doing that here is because we have to do this within a method, and this is where we're going to be creating our screen recorder object. And actually, we want our screen recorder object to be public, so we're just going to create a screen recorder called screenRec up here, which we're by default, I guess we can set it equal to a new screen recorder just for purposes. We'll set it equal to at first to a blank rectangle and then also to this, but we definitely want them to create it, so we'll say down here screenRec is equal to a new screen recorder, which will be the bounds, as well as having the output path that was just selected. And then if for whatever reason they don't say something, then we could just do something like message box dot show please select a folder, and then we could just let them know that that's an error. So this will just make the user select a folder. And so we also, the next thing we want to do is we want to add a timer, and this timer is probably going to be the most important timer you've ever created in your life. This is going to be the timer that we use to record the video. And I'm going to set the interval to, I believe, 15 is what I found to be helpful. You can play around with this interval as well as the frame rate that we created down here to try and get the audio and video to match up. but this is what I found to be useful. So we're going to create this timer, and then I want to make sure that I'm going to name this. So I'm just going to call this TMR record here. And inside the timer, what we want to do is we want to say our screen recorder dot record audio and screen recorder dot record video. So we want to make sure that we're recording both audio and video while we're in our screen recording timer here. And then all the record button is going to do is going to say TMR record dot start. But actually we want to say if folder selected, then do TMR.stop. And then if it's not, then we just want to say message box dot show you must select an output folder before recording. And then error. This way we won't they won't crash the program by hitting record before selecting an output folder. And so after this, we want to go into our stop here, and with stop, what we just want to say, we want to say screenrec.stop. We want to stop both the screen recorder. Well, first thing we're going to do is we want to say TMR record.stop. We want to stop the timer that's recording, and then we also want to stop the screen recorder. Make sure that you're stopping both and not just one. And then finally, after all of this, what we can say is we also just want to say application.restart, just because I'm too lazy to come up with a way that automatically restarts it. That could be something you can work on if you really want to. And we can also create a label here that will keep track of the time. So we can say that this is just by default equal to 0. And we can increase the size to maybe that, and then we also probably want to give this a name, so we'll just call this LBL time, and then as the screen recorder is recording, we'll just say LBL time is equal to screenrec dot get elapsed time. What can dot text. There we go. Okay. So let me get rid of this too. So I believe if I did all this right, which I think I did, this should all work. So why don't we go ahead and try to run it, see if we get any errors. And okay. It's running. It's a good sign. Okay. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to select an output folder. And for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a folder that I have on my desktop, which I call test folder here. And I'm going to select that as my folder. And then in order to see if this is working, the first thing we're going to do is I have a D drive. So let's hit record and let's see what it does. So if I hit record, so now it should be recording. And so I want to go into I want to look for temp screen, I believe is what I call it. Hold on, what did I call the temporary folder? I call the temporary folder temp screenshot. So let me see if it is created. Okay, so we see that the folder temporary screenshots was created, and we can see all these screenshots are being added to the temporary screenshot folder. We have 300 of them. And then, so if I go ahead and I hit stop, it may take a little bit, but once I hit stop, we should see all of the screenshots be deleted for first thing. Then this command will show up, which will show us that it's combining the audio and video, and we can actually see this happening. So see, all 3 of those videos folders are here, and then it looks like it deleted all of them, and I think I know why it did that. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so I figured out why it deleted all of them. We actually have to go back into our screen recorder app, and on the method here, delete files, etc. We have to change these two forward slashes to backslashes. And then once we do that, the program should run as expected. So once again, we have to select a folder, and this is going to be, once again, my test folder here. And I'm just going to go into test folder. I already tried it out. And then I'm going to hit record, and it should be recording both my audio and video at this point, so I can just go around and do different things, and then I can hit stop, and we can see that it creates the mic and video file here, and then it runs the FFmpeg command in command prompt, and then it combines the two into the final video and deletes both of them. And if I open this up, record, and it should be recording both my audio and video at this point, so I can just go around and do different things, and then I can hit. Yeah, and as you see, it recorded the audio and the video and saved it into one file. And it's not even that big, it's about 833 kilobytes. And so yeah, that will pretty much do it. You can, once again, as I said, you can play around with the with the frame rate and the interval of this timer, as well as the frame rate, to try and get the audio and video to match up a little bit more. But that's pretty much all there is to creating a screen recorder. And so yeah, I will leave all the source code I used for this down in the description, as well as a link to one of my blog posts where I explain everything kind of like as I did in this video. And yeah, so if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.